We as a group really tend to love our franchises, don't we? From comic books, to video games, to movies, everything these days has to be a franchise. And a lot of these franchises have been long-running things. But in all those long-running franchises, it's easy to lose your way. Continuity errors creep in, plot holes that are never really covered, or where a franchise started has nothing to do anymore with where it is right now. So these are 5 franchises that has completely lost their way and have nothing to do anymore with what they were before. At number 5 we find Resident Evil. And I'm talking about the movies here and not the video games. Although a lot can be said that Resident Evil 1, the video game, has very little to do with Resident Evil 6, the video game. Both in design, as well as the main elements of it, being from survival horror to just a randomized shooter. With granted a couple of elements of horror in there, however that was never really the main focus now, was it? And in the movies as well, the first movie is quite a simple thing, a basic survival in a lab underground from the mansion. Now we all know the mansion from the video games, and this was loosely based on that. Where the movies have gone wrong is setting up the entire picture though. We went from Alice having a little team to Alice having no teams and having awesome superpowers to Alice having a small team again with no superpowers this time. Then we had a big bad thing up on the White House that ended the movie, and it's just then completely forgotten in the next one. Now we see all these characters there, we see them returning all the time in different forms, in different outfits, in different character sheets, so to speak. But what is really left of the original movie, or the video games that they're based on? The answer is very little. Resident Evil, both the video games as well as the movies, has had a lot of dedicated fans. But they went full mainstream with the video games and the movies and tried to make it appeal to anyone instead of the following that they already had. And as a team we're gonna come across a lot in this list. At number 4 we find the X-Men. Again, we are talking here about the movies. The same can again be said for the comic books this time, because we all know how Marvel tried to reposition the X-Men and the mutants as a whole in their worlds, giving more leeway to the Inhumans because the rights issues were still with Fox for the movies and stuff like that, and not with Disney where they are right now. But just let's think about the movies for a second here. Start out with X-Men 1, 2 and 3, which weren't the best movies around, but I mean, it was still watchable. Then came X-Men First Class with the origin stories of Wolverine as well. X-Men Origins Wolverine, Logan. Now Logan was the best movie in this franchise. And why was it? Because it had very little to do with the actual X-Men. We see them in some flashbacks. We do have Charles Xavier there in his original role played by Patrick Stewart. But other than that, it wasn't a real X-Men movie. And that made it the best movie out of that entire expanded X-Men universe. And just as the last movie in the franchise, we got Dark Phoenix. Now it was the last movie that Fox was gonna make of the X-Men franchise because the rights did go back to Marvel and Disney. But to cap it all off with that much of a stinker. I mean, the Dark Phoenix saga was one of the best comic book arches ever written. And the movie had very little to do with the actual comic books in the end. Sure, we got Jean Grey being the Dark Phoenix, but what's all that other fluff around there? As a comic book fan, having read the Dark Phoenix saga, looking really forward to this movie, everyone left that cinema very disappointed into what it became. And that's why X-Men as a whole is granted the 4th spot on this list. At number 3 we find The Matrix. I'm only talking about the 3 main installments of the Matrix franchise, The Matrix 1, 2 and 3 respectively. Now The Matrix 1, it was a marvel of its era, a beautiful piece of technological cinema, and it was just awesome. I saw it in movie theaters back in the day, and everyone was just blown away by what The Matrix was. Matrix 2 came around a couple of years later, and people were still like, yeah, okay, they dialed it down a bit. At this point we were more used to seeing stuff like that, but still it was a pretty decent movie. But then The Matrix 3. When it was with all the Smiths, seriously, the reliance there on CGI was so heavy that it took focus away on what could have been a real story about revolution and evolution of mankind. What we got instead was an over-the-top video game boss fight between Neo and Agent Smith. And nobody asked for that. It was fine that Agent Smith was a bad guy during movies 1 and part of 2, let's say part of 2, because he wasn't really that big of the bad guy in number 2. However, why did we have to bring him back for the 3rd one? Let Neo fight the supreme leader of those robots. Let him fight that AI and prevail, so that mankind will be set free from those paths they are living in, from the Matrix, and actually start to rebuilding Earth, hopefully having learned from the experience. But no, Neo goes back into the Matrix, fight Agent Smith, who is apparently some kind of virus now, and that's the end of it. Neo dies, Agent Smith dies, and nothing changes. What a colossal waste of 3 movies! At number 2 we find the Terminator franchise. Now, T1, T2, awesome movies. Terminator 2 is actually considered one of the great classics of cinema, and with reason. And then Terminator 3 came around, and I was like, yeah, we'll watch it, sounds good. But everything after Terminator 3, what the hell is going on? You've got a timeline right now that is so diluted that even the creators of these movies don't know what to do with it anymore. They're not sure how the plot evolved, what's going on in this timeline, what's going on in that one. Because if this happened in the 6th movie, wait, and that couldn't have happened in the 2nd movie. But if that didn't happen in the 2nd movie, then stuff in the 4th movie doesn't make sense. Trying to figure out what is going on in the Terminator franchise right now could be a study at college, a 3-year course. The timeline is so diluted, it's so messed up. And we as an audience are supposed to sit in cinemas, pay a lot of money to go see this movie and enjoy it. Well, no. Sure, if it's mindless entertainment you want, go right ahead. If you don't care about the story, if you just want to see big ass robots being blown up, this is the movie for you. However, if you've been invested in this franchise from the first movie all the way up to, what are we now, the sixth movie? Then you are not gonna have a good time sitting in that seat having paid money to go watch this. And that's why it's deserving of the number 2 spot on our list today. Our number 1 spot, and this is something close to my heart, and I've talked about this on the channel before, Star Wars. A New Hope was awesome. Jedi and Empire, just the same. Great movies. Yeah, we ended up with some plot holes in there. Then we got the entire extended universe, the video games, the comic books, the novels, you name it. And everything made sense. Everything was great. Flash forward a couple of years, and we're with the prequels. Now, the prequels had its moments, but all in all, wasn't George Lucas's best work. A lot of people are quick to point fingers to the dialogue and to Jar Jar Binks, but it was really an overall issue, wasn't it? Lucas tried to capture the sense of wonder, the sense of excitement from the first 3 movies and put it into the prequel, and it just didn't work. And then Disney came in the picture. Disney bought up Star Wars, they bought up Lucasfilm, and it was 2014, and it was one of the blackest days in nerd and geek fandoms. Why? Because everything we've known as canon, everything before the prequels, everything after the original trilogy, everything was correct. Everything was just like, yeah, we don't have rights to these things, so it's not canon anymore, we're gonna put it in a different category called Legends. We're not gonna publish anything of it anymore, so fuck off everyone. And then they followed that up with the announcement of a new movie, where they basically just did A New Hope, but with new characters. I mean, yeah, fine, it worked. It worked for a moment there. And fans were happy to see how it evolved, because The Force Awakens, it was a decent movie. Was it a decent Star Wars movie? No. Hell no. And then the rest of the movies were announced. Rogue One. Solo: A Star Wars Story. The Last Jedi. Rise of Skywalker. In my opinion, Rise of Skywalker, the last movie, hopefully, for the moment, is the worst offender. It's like the writers listened to everything everyone had to say about the movie, or as a franchise as a whole, and just adapted all of that into the last movie. The Rise of Skywalker was pure fan service and nothing else. It kept all the story, and hopefully it will stay kept off, but it was utter garbage. Let me be clear about this. It was utter shit. It did what it had to do, it stopped the trilogy from going any further, but it's such major fan service that the movie is just not watchable anymore. And when it boils down to it, I think that's true for the entire franchise ever since Disney bought them up. Now, if you don't agree with me, or if you do agree with me, put it down in the comments. Leave a thumbs up if you liked what you saw. Subscribe to the channel, because it does help us grow, and share this with your friends. Other than that, it's goodbye from me.